I'm going to do it again because it seems to work. We keep on growing quite a lot. Guys, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you do. We're literally on the run up now to 10,000. The growth has been amazing since we put a call to action in place. So again, going to do it again. Please do subscribe if you haven't already. As stated, the podcasts get better. Guests are going to come. And of course, the live call-in show, the bigger we get. Dom, how has your week been?
The week's been good. The week has been busy. Now, since our last podcast, we've had a lot of revelations in the UK, a lot of big news dropping, and I'm excited to follow it. But guys, if you are on X as well, I'm going to link my X below. I'm going to be more active on there. If you want to DM me or you have any questions, feel free to hit me up in the DMs. That is Point Blank Dom on X. But yeah, let's get right into it, Dan.
Shall we start with, of course, the famous comedian Graeme Linehan getting arrested at Heathrow Airport for suspicion of inciting violence on posts he made on X. Now, again, the way that he recollected the situation is that 5 armed police literally came in and arrested him and took him away. He obviously had to go to hospital because his blood pressure went so high. But it was over 3 tweets. And to be perfectly honest, Dom, they aren't bad at all. And you've got to remember, this guy's a comedian, by the way. So people didn't see the comedic effect with one of the tweets that he put. But this was one of the tweets, Dom. If a trans-identified male is a female-only space, he is committing a violent, abusive act. Make a scene, call the cops, and if all else fails, punch him in the balls. Can you not see the funny side of that? Like, do you know what I mean? It's a joke. He's a comedian, right? I know he's got those kind of views. He's obviously been cancelled from mainstream television for his sort of views. It's just the world that we live in, unfortunately. But one of the greatest comedic writers that we've seen in British and Irish history. And of course, he has now been arrested for not just that tweet, but also this one. It was a group of activists outside his house, and he's put a photo you can smell.
Oh my lord.
And then the last one that he put was this one here. I hate them, misogynists and homophobes, fuck them. So they're the tweets that he got arrested for at Heathrow Airport. What do you think of that?
You know what, 2025 UK, comedy is now illegal. It's insane, you know, it's so draconian. And you know what, comedians, they need a free pass to talk about whatever they want and however they want. When you can't even make satirical tweets or comedic tweets, this is an award-winning comedian we're talking about here. And to control his speech on niche topics like this is just insane. Now, to have 5 policemen arrest armed policemen. Like, this guy's got high blood pressure. He doesn't look like a threat. He looks like a very nice gentleman, but if I'm going to be honest, doesn't look like a threat to anyone. And to have 5 armed policemen drag him off of a plane is just absolutely, it just bewilders me. What use is this in terms of public resources to be controlling the speech? Now, this goes into the sort of the online hate speech we have, the Online Safety Act. Now, again, it's the Ofcom people who are labeling this as incitement to hatred or violence. We don't even need to have someone report this and say they feel harmed. It's only the Ofcom people who say there is an intent to harm. This is the state we're living in 2025 UK.
Well, in his personal Substack, he literally said that he was treated like a terrorist. He had the reception of a terrorist at the airport, of course, coming back from America, which ironically he would have, the First Amendment still in place there. He can say whatever he wants there. And then, of course, put into a cell, banged up, and the police officer told him, you were arrested for offensive tweets that you made. And then, of course, he did go to the hospital, and then obviously I think he's been released as such. But the Free Speech Union said that they're going to be fighting his case a little bit later on, which we've seen a lot of people have that support from them. But ironically, Dom, Kier Starmer has come out. A lot of people have been saying, of course, Kier Stalin, and he's the man from at the top that's kind of ordering this sort of suppression of free speech. However, what has came out this morning is actually Kier Starmer has slammed the Metropolitan Police for arresting and going after a comedian for his tweets. So he didn't actually say it himself. It came via the Prime Minister's official spokesperson, and they said this is an operational matter for the police, but the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary have been clear about what their priorities on crime and policing are. That's tackling antisocial behaviour, shoplifting and street crime, as well as reducing serious violent crimes such as knife crime and violence against women. So the Prime Minister essentially is kind of refuting any association to this, and he wants nothing to do with it at all. Because whatever you say, the way the police are acting, of course, Kier Starmer's always, we've seen it. He's seen it over the last year that he's sort of brunting the responsibilities for these orders. What do you make of Kier Starmer sort of refuting it and taking a step back and saying, no, I don't want the police to do this? Do you think it's for publicity, or do you think he actually wants them to go after this kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think it's really a reaction to the public backlash that he's received for this. Now, Graeme is a public figure. This guy is an award-winning comedian. And, there's clearly been a massive backlash, not only in the UK, but we're seeing a lot of support from Americans. So shout out all the American listeners out there. It's obviously this is completely draconian. I feel like it's just stepping way too far. Now, if he doesn't condemn this, it looks really bad on him, because it looks like it's coming directly from him. But he's kind of sort of outsourced it. He said, well, this is a police matter, but we want police to focus on, as you said before, antisocial behaviour, shoplifting and street crimes. Well, if that is the case, then why are these arrests still happening?
And we've seen the Online Safety Act actually published, a month ago, or came into effect a month ago. And, I mean, we've seen it. We spoke about it extensively here on the podcast. And, it was in black and white that this was a thing. They were going to be going after people that do put hurty words on X and social media. So there's a bit of a weird, disconnect, I suppose, from Kier Starmer and the rest. And actually, to be fair, with Kier Starmer this week, since we've been returning from recess, and we've seen it prior to the recess as well, starting to take up a little bit of a right angle in terms of politics. We've started to see that he's the man that's going to stop illegal migration. He's the man that's going to do this. He's going to be the man that shuts down the hotels. And then, of course, we're seeing in Labour, obviously, when we'll get to it soon, about Yvette Cooper coming out and speaking about the asylum seekers and stopping loopholes as such. But whilst Labour are coming on TV and saying about the Epping thing and the council, he's posting photos about detaining and deporting. And then all the Labour MPs are in there sort of talking about, we need safe and legal routes. We can't be criminalising illegal migrants and hotels, and a lot of them are saying this, but Kier Starmer, the Prime Minister, is actually going the opposite angle on everything. And we'll see in an interview a little bit later on that we're going to watch and react to. He actually says that he doesn't want asylum hotels in his own town and wouldn't let his own daughter, walk past them. Are we seeing a disconnect from just Kier and the rest of the Labour Party? Or is he trying to play both sides a little bit?
He's definitely playing both sides. Look, there is a massive disconnect between what he says and what he does. Now, what he says is trying to pander to this sort of pendulum of ideas that's shifting rightwards. And I feel like he understands how the sort of Overton window is shifting massively here. He's trying to appeal to the middle voters who are being, ostracized, who are the victims of the hotels. And he's trying to say, look, we are solving it. We are going to get these done. We are going to shut down the hotels. Yet there is a massive disconnect between the policies of the party. Now, again, we've mentioned this, but he said categorically that he will end asylum hotels in 4 years, yet offering 7-year contracts to these, very boutique, bougie countryside hotels in order to house migrants. We've had David Lammy, come out and say that he needs to make the asylum process a lot streamlined. We need to end indefinite detention of asylum seekers. And yet, it's a complete disconnect for what Kier is saying.
It's massively a massive disconnect from it. I want to show you and the rest of the viewers, obviously, this interview that came out. This is the first after the sort of 3-week recess. Kier Starmer speaking about asylum hotels, and obviously the famous soundbite of where he was asked if he would let his if he would like to live next to one or let his daughter walk past one. Let's just have a little watch of this, and we'll hear it from the man himself, what he thinks with regard to asylum hotels.
Is to smash the gangs. So far, the only thing you've smashed is the record for the number of people coming in small boats. How are you going to win back the trust of voters who at the moment think that Nigel Farage and Reform UK have been making all the running on this?
Yeah, let me first acknowledge it's a really serious issue. We have to have control of our borders, and I completely get it. And I'm determined that whether it's people crossing in the first place, whether it's people in asylum hotels, or whether it's returning people, we absolutely have to deal with this. When it comes to the asylum hotels, I want them emptied. I've been really clear about that. I completely understand why people are so concerned about it. The only way to empty them is an orderly, systematic working through of the cases as quickly as possible, and then returning those people who should not be here. I'm really pleased that in the first year of Labour government, we've returned 35,000 people who shouldn't be here. But again, I want to go further and faster, and let me be absolutely clear through you. I want to see every single asylum hotel closed. The way to do that is in an orderly way that actually gets the cases done. And here's the big divide.
The trouble is, Prime Minister,
just hear me out, because you put to me, Nigel Farage. The difference here is between an orderly, sensible way of actually fixing a problem we inherited from the Tories, or fanciful arrangements that are just not going to work. I mean, Nigel Farage and Reform are just the politics of grievance. They feed on grievance. They don't want the problem solved because they've got no reason to exist if the problems are solved. And so the contrast in politics is a Labour government rebuilding, renewing the country in the way that we said we would, or this politics of grievance that simply puts forward unworkable, fanciful ideas that are actually not fair to the public to put forward yet again ideas that just aren't going to work.
But let me take you to one of these towns where there is an asylum hotel. How would you feel if it was a hotel at the end of your road? If your daughter was having to walk past one of these hotels every day, how would that make you feel?
I completely get it. I mean, local people, by and large, do not want these hotels in their towns, in their place. And nor do I. I'm completely at one with them on that. I'm not in any way underestimating the strength of feeling that there is, because people strongly feel that these claims should be processed. People shouldn't be held at their expense.
They don't want that hotel at the end of the road. They're trying to live their lives. Their children, they're worried if their children are safe.
Well, look, I understand why people want the hotels closed. I want them closed, and I will work across the board to close them as quickly as possible. That is my aspiration. Every one of those hotels closed down as quickly as possible. Well, the way to do that is to work through the backlog.
But can you put a date on it?
Well, we've said we'll get rid of them all by the end of the Parliament.
That's a long way. That's 4 years away.
I'd like to bring that forward. I think it's a good challenge. I want to bring that forward, and part of the change in the phasing of government is to say what we need to do needs to go further and faster and be brought forward. But do I understand why people are concerned about asylum hotels? Absolutely, I do. Do I share their feeling that they should be closed as soon as possible? Yes, I do. But we've got to have a sensible way of actually doing that, and not a fanciful proposition. And it's all very easy for Nigel Farage to put out fanciful propositions that aren't going to work. It's actually not fair to the public to keep pretending that these answers are there. And, these are people who just talk down our country. They want the problems to persist. Nigel Farage doesn't want these problems to go away because once the problem's gone, he's got no grievance. He's got nothing for his politics to attach to.
Well, he would obviously say he does want this problem solved, and he said he's got...
Thoughts?
Yeah, he's talking about, Nigel Farage.
He's obsessed with him, isn't he?
I know.
Yeah, he's in his head a little bit there.
Definitely rent-free.
Nigel Farage. Yeah.
He's talking about this, almost the same type of rhetoric that Nigel says, political impossibility to deport all these people. So even though, Labour is on the left here and Nigel Farage is obviously more right-wing, they're both talking with the same rhetoric. I mean, he's clearly intimidated, and to be fair, I will agree with him. He did inherit the problem from the Conservative Party. You know, this is 14 years of mismanagement of the immigration system that he is importing, yet he is not making any steps in the right direction. You know, I've gone over the immigration statistics for, you know, July 2024 to 2025. Nearly every metric has gone worse. You know, we're talking about only a 10% increase in deportations, yet a 10% increase in the actual number of people coming in, yet the number of people coming in, the increase is the increase from last year to this year is bigger than the amount of deportations that happened. So like the problem is getting worse. And, you know, he can talk all he likes about bringing forward the date. You know, it's all just nonsense rhetoric that doesn't actually hold any weight. It's complete political fluff. And I feel like, you know, every single time he sort of is intimidated by this sort of far right. It's funny because, like, you know, the whole angle here is that reform is going to take the sort of next elections. They have massive support across the country. But, you know, we don't even know if that is the right direction to go yet. It's quite interesting, and I do want to hear what you think about it as well.
Well, I just like I obviously do like follow everything that's happening like daily just due to the channel I operate, and I'm seeing this massive like actual disconnect on the left, literally just from Kier Starmer down. Like Kier Starmer's doing something completely different to everybody else. Like I watched this, which we'll get into. You can see Yvette Cooper, obviously the Home Secretary, announcing new plans, which, again, it was more incentive. Like, it was apparently closing certain loopholes. And then, but I felt that it was more incentives for illegal migrants coming in. And you heard all of the Labour MPs, when obviously they announce something, everyone from the different parties are allowed to, like, ask questions on stuff. But the stuff and the rhetoric that was coming from, like, the Labour politicians was, like, super pro illegal migration. They were saying you can't do this kind of stuff. You know, you got to think about it. We can't just close hotels, all of this sort of stuff. And you're seeing that across the board with the Epping ruling as well. But Kier Starmer's just out on his own doing his own thing, which is really weird. So I find that the most sort of alarming, I suppose, in their sort of party. Mm-hmm. I watched that whole interview. It was about 15 minutes with BBC Radio 5 Live. They didn't ask the question about, okay, you want to close the hotel, so why are you getting your own judges in place and appealing to close the Bell Hotel? So I'd have been interested to see as to his answer for that. No one's asked him that yet. It's Prime Minister's questions today. Maybe we'll have an answer a bit later on. However, with Kier, I find it a really weird disconnect. I mean, I think he's trying to save his public image a little bit because, weirdly enough, he's the leader. Whether you can say that he's playing at two sides, he's actually kind of gone more into a bit of a centre role, whilst his own politicians, his own party, stay on the left. I find it really weird. Like, It's just like his posts that he puts up every day. If you come to this country illegally, we'll detain and deport you. But then you hear Parliament and what they're saying, or the TV interviews with that Bridget the other day as well on Sky News. Then it's complete opposite from what he's saying and they're saying. It's really weird.
Yeah, you've literally got him sort of campaigning for like, stopping the boats and stopping the hotels, and yet you're right. You've got that Bridget saying that the refugees come before the citizens of Epping, and you know it's crazy. He's such a champagne socialist. He doesn't actually have, or he won't experience any of the problems that he's causing right now because he's disconnected from the sort of consequences of them. He said himself that he wouldn't like his children walking near or past these hotels. He wouldn't want to live near the hotels. Of course, he lives at number 10 Downing Street. They're not going to put a hotel near there, are they?
Never. They're absolutely not. John, I touched upon this, of course, it broke on Monday. And it was essentially Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, announcing new plans. And essentially, what it was apparently closed sort of loopholes that refugees were getting with regard to family. But listen to this minute spiel from Yvette Cooper, and I hear more incentives rather than closing loopholes. Have a watch.
The Home Office has put in place systems to issue expedited visas with biometric checks conducted prior to arrival for children and their immediate accompanying family members. And we have done the same for all the Chevening scholars and are in the process of doing so now for the next group of students from Gaza who have been awarded fully funded scholarships and places at UK universities so they can start their studies in autumn this year. And And later this year, we will set out plans to establish a permanent framework for refugee students to come study in the UK so we can help more talented young people fleeing war and persecution to find a better future, alongside capped and managed ways for refugees to work here in the UK. Mr. Speaker, this government is determined to fix every aspect of the broken system we inherited and to restore the confidence of the British people.
Wow, it doesn't sound like they're fixing the broken system. It sounds like they're breaking the system. They're unleashing the floodgates. I mean, what the hell are we doing offering fully, a full ride in university to people in Gaza? What the fuck?
This is the world we live in, mate. This is the country that we live in. Like, why is Gazan children our problem to put with the scholarships and offering them fully paid scholarships and all these things? But there's more to the point there as well. The Gaza students will, so when their visa is to study there, they then become permanent afterwards. And then, guess what? When they're permanent, come on, jump over, let's go.
And she mentioned as well,
the families all coming over.
Families, yeah, immediate families. We've seen the fraud happen
and what
in
constitutes
Afghanistan
as an immediate family?
Exactly.
You know, some of these people have about 15 children, like 1,000 cousins. You know, like immediate family. Like again, this was supposed to be stopping and covering up a loophole. But I just hear way more incentives that they've just created for more illegals to come in.
It's crazy, you know. I do give Nigel a lot of shit, but he did say one thing that was really funny. It's like, if you study in the UK, you can't bring your mum with you.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It's true though.
No, exactly.
You know, and as well, again, I've said it before, but the fraud that happened with the Afghanistan deal, where a single person brought 23 immediate family members over.
Yeah.
Like, this is going to be opening the floodgates, and you know what they're doing is they're just trying to get people out of Gaza. This is the thing. Like, and then, you know, you can go into the sort of wider geopolitical, ramifications of that, you know, how sort of Israel is trying to expand into Gaza, the sort of operations for like sort of the wider Israel thing. But I do have a bit on that in terms of the US influence on that scheme as well. But, you know, it's crazy. Egypt does not offer any refugee status, yet they're bordering them.
I was going to say, and the Muslim Brotherhoods, UAE, Qatar, they don't want any of them in there.
Yeah, they all do it for, you know, political purposes. It's crazy because I've seen so many, you know, people of Middle Eastern descent, they're all supporting Gaza, they all love Gaza, yet none of them are taking any of the refugees. It's all our problem.
Yeah.
Why is it our problem? Why are we so inclined to import people who have such different ideologies, such different cultures and way of lives? Why do we want them in our country? Yet they can go to a very similar country in a similar neighborhood in that sort of region of the world. Why is the Muslim Brotherhood not backing people in Gaza? It's unbelievable.
Yeah, look, Saudi's the new place. Look, they're investing so much money into their country. They're going to make it bigger and better than Dubai. Are they bringing any of them in there why don't you get them to come in and pay for their studies, and then all of a sudden they're going to be the pillar, the rock to your future economy later on down the line, and ask them the question. They're like, nah, fuck that.
You know what? I follow a lot of political commentators in the UAE who are obviously of Muslim faith, and they are adamant. They are so anti-Islam extremism. You know, we had one of the spokesmen say, I think it was 8 years ago, how the fall of Europe will be because of radical Islam. Now, this was a Muslim from the UAE saying this. And
2017, Foreign Minister of UAE, and he said, I'm going to say it in English. And he said, no, we can translate it. No, I'm going to say it in English so you don't mess up my words.
Yep.
And he said, due to political correctness, we're going to see much more radical attacks coming out of Europe due to woke governments trying to be politically correct and being ignorant to us, telling them that this shouldn't be happening. And
And you know, he was
starting to see it. And we've got an incident in France that we're going to speak about a little bit later on the podcast of an Islamic attack yesterday, of course, in Marseille. But just keeping on to Kier Starmer, the Labour government, you had a bit with regard to Starmer IDing people?
Yes.
Or boats or something like that? I don't know anything about this. I need you to tell me.
Yeah, it's a very strange sort of way to get this ID verification in. So, Kier Starmer. So, let me give you a little hypothetical here, Dan. Okay, if your house is being robbed, what would you do? Would you lock the door, or would you install CCTV inside of the house?
Well, it depends.
Let's say the door was open.
Oh, if the door was open, I would lock the door.
Oh, there you go then. Well, Kier wants to put CCTV inside the house rather than lock the door.
Right, I see.
So he's introducing a plan to introduce digital ID cards for every citizen to help stop the boats. Now, explain the logic behind that. So Kier Starmer is considering the introduction of digital ID cards for every citizen in the UK as he seeks to step up his efforts to crack down on the small boat crisis. Now,
I'm lost already.
I know, I'm not really seeing the correlation here. The Prime Minister chair an emergency ministerial meeting on Tuesday to explore how ID cards could be used to address the pull factors that draw migrants to make the crossing to UK shores. So, if I just interpret that correctly, he's trying to make the UK worse so migrants won't come here. Now, Downing Street has also refused to rule out making any introduction of ID cards mandatory, insisting that it is willing to look at what works. It comes as the government seeks to wrestle back control of the narrative around immigration from Nigel Farage's reform, setting out concrete plans to clamp down on the number of channel crossings.
This is actually an article.
Yeah, it's iNews.
What?
Very confusing.
I don't get that whatsoever. I mean, so what you're trying to say is a way for him to enforce digital ID on British citizens is under the guise of, well, it's going to stop the boats.
Yeah.
In what way?
I know.
I don't get that whatsoever. I mean, that's just a dumb idea. Like, every time I say it with Labour, they do absolutely everything but dealing with the actual problem at hand. Every single time.
Yeah, they will dance around the issue. They will dance around it like it's a bloody fire pit. Yet they could just throw a bucket of water over it.
Yeah.
It's insane.
It's one of those things.
Well, it's just like a Trojan horse, right? They'll say, okay, so we want to stop the boats, we want to make it.
But I don't get how anyone would think that's going to stop the boats by digital IDs.
Okay, here's a radical idea.
There is no correlation.
Here's a radical idea, Dan. Why don't we just stop the boats?
I mean, that's crazy, Dom. You can't just do that.
No, I'm sorry. That's crazy. No, that's my bad. That's my bad.
Go on, give him a bit of hate in the comments for saying that.
No,
you can't
you're
just
right.
stop the boats. You're so dumb, Dom, man. What the fuck?
It's true. No,
we all know that.
What we should do, actually, is we should make digital IDs mandatory, because that'll stop the boats.
There you go. That's a great idea. There we go. Now we'll give him an applause in the comment section below. There you go. Great idea, Dom.
Thanks,
I love that
guys.
one.
I could be a bloody councillor for Labour.
Yeah, politician. Get him in.
Might
Them
win.
great ideas and great remarks. That's
Full of them.
amazing. Talking about boats, someone who is synonymous with boats, and I found myself speaking about Mr. Elon Musk every single day, but he's probably issued his most scathing attack on Nigel Farage this morning in a tweet, and basically, went hard on him, saying this. Well, let me go and find it. My poor admin oh my God, Elon posts so much, man. I can't find it. Here we go.
You know what? As someone who runs like 7 or 8 different companies with literally a combined market cap of trillions of dollars, he has a lot of time for Twitter.
Yeah, I know. No, I told you in the last one, I genuinely do think it's because he's on vacation. Every time, end of August, September, he's always getting involved, and you'll see it again in January. He just like disappears after a while. He just like drops a little bomb and disappears for a while, and then comes back in January. So I think he's on vacation. He just can't turn off.
I don't think he turns off.
Yeah.
I think he's up 23 hours of the day, to be honest.
Well, this is what he said. He said, Farage's weak, runny source, he won't let reform even stand up for their own people, e.g. punishing their Epping member, and he will change nothing of significance politically. Go with Advance UK, Ben and Tommy for the real change that's needed to save Britain. We said it before, and I've said it again. Farage is literally just getting attacked by Elon Musk.
Yeah, this is
He's
war.
going for him. He's almost going for the jugular a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, he really doesn't trust the guy, does he?
You know what? We first saw this happen, obviously, as you mentioned, in January. And the timing of that was very interesting because Farage went to the Mar-a-Lago for the inauguration, or, when Trump won the presidency. Did something happen in person? Because we know Trump, he gave Farage a shout out saying he backs him, he's a very good friend of his, maybe the next prime minister. And yet we're seeing, obviously, Elon just spin it and do the exact opposite. Well, Elon does not follow. He does not bend the knee to anyone. Yeah. Not even Trump himself.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, he's got his own opinions. He's a man of principle and will voice his own opinions for it. He's definitely not controlled by anyone.
100%.
So,
and I wouldn't bet against him.
Yeah. No, but you said this, right? So you said in January, you said that, I think in the last podcast, in your little viral moment on the short, you said he operates at a different level and knows information that's not privy to all of us. And then he came out and kind of doxed Nigel Farage in the January. And then after that, in the February, March, we started to see Reform have a little bit of an internal feud with Rupert Lowe. We started to hear a lot of flip-flopping from Nigel Farage after that, with where his policies sort of lie. So did Elon know something that we didn't? Because the whole world, well, the whole of the UK that is on the right, I suppose in January, was fully behind Reform being the party to make the change.
Me included?
Yeah, me included as well. And then after that, everyone was like, I almost felt a little bit hurt when Musk went for Farage. I was like, wow, you can't say that about him. And then all of a sudden, a month later, 2 months later, we started to see all this internal feud and the mess that was created afterwards. So, what is coming next? That he's going hard on him even more.
It's true. Like, one of the key parts of his sort of rant back in January was actually putting his backing behind Rupert Lowe, who at the time was at Reform. Yeah. And then literally a couple of weeks later, we see Lee Anderson and Zia Youssef make phony gun charges against Rupert Lowe. Now, I actually do have a tweet here from Rupert Lowe regarding his history with Reform. Now, this is, bear in mind, this is back in, I believe, May. So this is tweeted on May 16th. So, as a result of false allegations that I made threats against the Reform chairman, on the 14th of March at 9:30, armed police arrived at my home unannounced, 3 vehicles with 4 armoured officers. The previous day, I had arranged with the police to voluntarily give up my guns. And bear in mind, he's got a lot of guns.
Yeah, I've seen the image of him when he got his guns back.
Yeah, he has to get a wheelbarrow to get them out. So, as you can imagine, to have armed police suddenly arrive on my doorstep late at night was deeply distressful. And he is a farmer. He says, I'm a farmer. Farmers have guns, all entirely legal. There is nothing unusual about it. The officers stayed until 11:30. They confiscated my guns and left. I have a large collection, so it took some time. A wheelbarrow was required. Of course, I fully cooperated, and now that the investigation has been dropped, I look forward to having my guns promptly returned. Now, here's the key part, Dan. He says, I do not blame the officers involved. I blame Reform. Their disgusting weaponization of the criminal justice system had very real life consequences for me and my family. So when people tell me to move on, the answer is no. Try having armed police arrive at your home unannounced late on a Friday evening. It's not a pleasant experience. The evil behavior from Reform leadership must be called out. Now, if somebody practically swat you. He got swatted.
Yeah.
Essentially, armed police, false allegations. Bear in mind, there's no backlash for Lee Anderson and Zia Youssef against these false allegations. And obviously, it caused a lot of distress. This happened at the same time that he was kicked out of Reform. Yeah. So you can see the bad blood in between these two people. And obviously, before this was Elon Musk backing Rupert Lowe.
Oh, right, okay,
yeah. So it all came at the same time. It's not a coincidence that this happened. Elon backs Rupert. Rupert gets kicked out. Phony gun charges happen. It's all bad blood, and I can't. I don't see how people can trust Reform after literally lying to the police.
Yeah. Well, there was another little revelation that came out about Reform this week, actually, and it kind of goes against what they kind of stand for. Reform are, I know they're synonymous with stopping the boats, but they're also this, they're going to be refuting, or they're going to be cancelling the Online Safety Act and want free speech to be a thing within the UK. But listen to this. Apparently, Reform are going to start suspending their councillors who share Tommy Robinson posts. So all of a sudden here, now you can be suspended from the Reform Party for not coming out publicly and speaking about Tommy Robinson, which you should be able to do anyway if freedom of speech exists, but sharing a post of his would lose your job as a Reform councillor. So what is it? Are you the advocates for free speech, or are you not the advocates for free speech? Why are you controlling what your members or your councillors can say, do or share on social media?
Yep.
That seems a little bit like Kier Starmer, a little bit, does it not?
Yeah, again, it's completely hypocritical. You're right. How can he say he's an advocate for free speech, yet he controls the speech of the Reform councillors? It's crazy. You know, when you sit on the fence, your feet aren't on the ground, either side. You know, he's not pandering to people on the left. He's not pandering to people on the right. He's in this weird little sort of grey area zone where nobody is appealing to him. The only reason he's got any momentum is because he was the third option that the UK didn't have. I know he obviously is sort of a populist. He's been in the public image a lot. You know, he campaigned so hard for Brexit, so hard. And as soon as the vote was done, he retired. You know, surely that's when the work starts.
Yeah.
Surely that's when, okay, you've campaigned your whole life to get the UK out of the EU. Perfect. As soon as that vote comes in, right, now the real work begins. Let's make great deals. You know, let's go to US. Let's lobby for deals with Australia, deals with the Middle East, things like that. You know, the barriers have been unleashed. You know, the ties are off. Let's go, full steam ahead. Yeah, he just retires.
Yeah, it is a bit of a weird situation, isn't it?
It is very weird, and you know, it just doesn't sit. It doesn't sit right with me. And is he going to do the same thing when Reform get into power, or if they get into power, he's going to fight so hard to get into power, and then once we're in power, okay, now we just back off a little bit. We've got 5 years.
Up a little bit, yeah.
Yeah,
and
take the foot off the gas. You know, it's all about getting the vote and sort of pushing. And then once he has the vote, like we saw him do, obviously in the Brexit, you know, he's gonna back off a bit. He's done his bit. He's won. He's getting a bit older now. You know, he's not gonna not that I have anything against his age, but obviously, you know, if he wanted to retire before, you know, obviously retirement is in his mind. Is he just going to push for this and use his populism to get the vote, to garner for it, and then as soon as he's in power, he's just going to back off?
Well, I think he's quite egotistical. I think he would actually like to be the Prime Minister. But I think, it's whether he keeps with his promises, and of course, I think this, whilst it might seem small, it's not got a lot of public publicity, right, about this sharing posts. It's a little bit, you know, controlling of what someone can and can't do, someone can and can't say. You can't say that you advocate for something, but completely do the opposite thing with your party members. So when you have more element of control as you become the Prime Minister and come into power, then what the hell are we going to see?
It's true, you know, we can only take what he does as gospel, you know. Like again with Starmer, we're seeing it clear as day. What he says and what Labour does are completely different. Like if I didn't actually know about the parties they were, I would say they were different parties. Like they're completely that different. Like, are we seeing the same thing with Reform? You know, it just bewilders me. And it's just crazy. You know, obviously the history is there. I think. You know, not backing the biggest political movement in the UK right now, maybe in the UK's history. We're talking potentially about the biggest march in UK history. Marginalising the biggest march, marginalising the Raise the Flag movement. It's just insanity. It's political, nihilism.
Yeah. Has Farage came out and demonised this, or?
Well, obviously, he said that Reform councillors can't go to the migrant protests.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know, the Unite the Kingdom protest is really the largest sort of. There's
going to be a lot of notable figures there, but because it's been ran by Tommy Robinson, he wants to disassociate from
exactly.
that. But you know, I Raise the Colour movements. I haven't heard him come out saying necessarily that this is a bad thing as such, has he? Because Kier's been saying it's good. Kier's that's what I'm saying with Kier at the start. He's disconnected massively right now. He's like, no, I have a St. George's flag in my thing. I have the Union Jack there where people didn't like me doing it, but I still stand by doing my speeches in front of the Union Jack. It's like, Wait, who's telling you can't do a speech in front of a Union Jack? But yeah, saying that he's got the St. George's flag flying proudly in his office as well. Like, and then he was also asked, what do you think about it? And he said, oh, I love patriotism. So he's like not even demonizing where maybe we would have seen before. He would have demonized those individuals that were raising their flags. And he kind of skewed the question. There was like, what do you think of the graffiti and stuff like that? He never answered it.
Yeah.
He never went like, no, I love patriotism. But he obviously didn't, he wouldn't condone sort of graffiti as such. But he didn't say, no, this is not bad. Whereas a year ago, he would have been like, these are far-right foes and vandalists and all these kind of things. And so we're seeing a weird, where Kier Starmer, maybe a bit more right-wing than Nigel Farage, which is a weird
maybe, on the surface, maybe.
On the surface, a little bit.
But he said this in a tweet. He said, I'm proud of our flag as a patriotic symbol of our nation. Like lots of people, I proudly got one up at home, which as a standalone tweet is fine, but then he ruins it.
Oh.
He says...
Kier?
Yeah, Kier. Oh. He says, using our flag to divide devalues it.
Oh, okay. Right, there you go. He came out. But I was harking back to that BBC Radio 5 Live interview that we just watched a little bit, but there's a bit on the St. George's bit later on.
Yeah.
And he doesn't actually, I think he does talk about division, but he was almost talking about, I love that they're flying the flag and all these kind of things.
Yeah.
But if he loved it so much, why aren't you sanctioning putting it on all governmental buildings, all buildings around the country? Why don't you, like an American approach, like it's mandatory to fly the Union Jack on your buildings?
I know. And he flying the flag in itself as a standalone has no political leaning left nor right anywhere.
It shouldn't be. Anyway, it's your flag, right?
And that is the core of the movement. It's simply Operation Raise the Colours. Like, okay, you can spin it in any political way you want, but like raising our national flag to a political movement is a fallacy because it's our national flag. If you want to put the national flag up, you put the national flag up. You know? But like he's obviously spinning it, using our flag to divide devalues it.
Yeah.
But who are you dividing? You're dividing the patriots and the nationals of this country against the people who hate the country. That's a good divide because we need to know who them people are. We need to know who the opposition is. This is what I talked about, game theory. You need to know who is with you and who is against you. Otherwise, you don't know your opposition. They lie in the grey area. They lie with you or against you. You don't know. But having a visceral reaction to the nation's flag means that you are against the nation. That's plain and simple.
That's a good point, Dom. That's a really good point, actually.
Thanks.
Yeah, I like that. I do like that. It was good. You're speaking a lot of sense. I mean, it does bring them out the woodwork. They are against their own nation. They're against their own nation's flag, which is, very true. And it's a good way to swap them and get rid of them.
Exactly. We'll put some motivational music behind it.
Yeah. You had something you were saying just before we walked in about something about the financial state of the UK.
Yes,
you did a little bit of research on it, so
before I
I'm
get
keen
into
to
this,
listen.
I'm not a financial expert, but I've done my best to explain this. So it really got got my attention with a tweet from Liz Truss. Now we all know that Liz Truss, the shortest reigning MP, I think she lasted just over a month here in 2022. So she tweeted, when I sought to escape Britain's doom loop in 2022 through tax cuts, spending restraints and deregulation, it was sabotaged by the Bank of England. They announced billions of gilt sales the day before the mini-budget and the misregulation pensions which spooked the market. Now we're seeing the counterfactual. So now the gilts are the sort of way the British sort of finances its spending. So realistically, gilt yields increase when investor demand increase, typically due to like rising interest rates or expectations of higher inflation. Now, what it's important to understand here is modern monetary theory is that tax is used as a deflationary arm. So the government spends as it likes, okay? And then it inflates the economy, and then it uses taxes to curb the inflation by removing spending power from the public sector. So people have this warped idea that, the government gets taxes and then it uses that money to then spend on public services. Well, that's completely wrong. Tax money is destroyed. It is completely wiped off and it is completely destroyed because the government has already spent that money. It holds the power to print money. Obviously, the sort of the bad timing after 2020 with massive inflation was sort of it pushed these gilts to rise. Now, factors like the worsening UK fiscal position or concerns about government debt levels can also drive up the gilt yields. But we saw the Bank of England basically sabotage Liz by selling loads of gilts, which spiked the price from literally about maybe like 1.8 to 2, all the way up to like 4.8% to 5%. Now we're seeing them same levels now. So we're seeing the same levels of gilt yields that lost Liz Truss her prime minister role. We're seeing the same levels now. Yet there's no sort of public discourse about this. So one of the key points here, so I'll just go into sort of the forecast of where the UK is going. Now, the national debt is quite large, and in terms of GDP, it's a massive portion of the GDP. So as it stands right now, the 30-year bond yield rose to 5.64%. Now, this is the highest since 1998. And the yields are now 15 times higher than they were in 2020. In terms of the government's own forecast, spending is set to cross 60% of GDP. So 60% of the economy comes from government spending, which means that 40% of the economy has to fund the whole economy, right? Because the 40% is the productive part that makes the cash, and then the 60% takes the taxes from the 40% and funds the whole thing. So it's, when you have more than sort of 40 or 50% of the economy, we're looking more like a sort of communist state. Like we're looking, because a communist state is like 100%. But this is the sort of the Fabian society ideology here. This gradualistic. Well, this is one of the key metrics that they'll use to gradually increase what percent of government spending is GDP. Obviously, their idea is 100%. So eventually, they want to get that to 100%, and that's from their own forecast is where they're going. I feel like the financial decisions that are happening right now, inflation is back up to 3.8%, yet they're still cutting interest rates. Obviously, we had a mini recession back in Q3 in 2023, we had 2 consecutive negative GDPs. Again, it wasn't in the media at all, yet we had a minus 0.1 and a minus 0.2%. It's just insanity. And what you're seeing as well is you're seeing people divert to, stores of wealth. We're talking about gold and we're talking about Bitcoin. So I'm not a financial advisor, but, as the government prints more money, and, the whole idea behind gold and Bitcoin is they're anti-inflationary, we might see a massive spike there. But as it stands right now, it doesn't look brilliant in terms of the forecasting. And I want to bring people aware of this because by 2073, the UK's debt is on course to be 274% of GDP. That is just insanity. It would imply the deficit that is running a massive 21% of GDP. Interest on this debt alone would equal 13% of GDP. That's just to pay the interest payments to investors.
Because that's what, as you're speaking about this, I'm sure I saw an article yesterday about the pound, and as you said, the sterling slides to 1.3315 as gilts hit 5.69%, and the UK borrowing cost hits highest since 1998, and pound slides on physical worries. So yeah, I mean,
and investors still aren't touching it. Okay, so they're expecting it to get to 6% by the end of the year. This is a financial collapse.
Yeah,
and yet we still have money for university students in Gaza.
Yeah, no.
What the fuck?
The priorities at play.
Exactly. $7 billion a year on hotels, 40,000 per person that comes here. We're having 1,000 people coming a day. That's like $4 million a day increase in public expenditure. You know, we're having such fraud. We've not even talked about the fraud, waste and abuse that's happening within the councils already. Like, I remember some of these articles that came out about, I think it was Suffolk or Surrey, one of the councils. I'll get the exact thing, but they were taking migrants to mini golf, and they were taking them bowling.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, no, I've seen that before. Like the perks that they were getting, they were allowed to there was like tickets or even like at these council events for them to go for free. When like a ticket would be £45 for a British citizen, but they were going for free, and they were like encouraging these illegal migrants or asylum seekers to go to these things.
Yeah. And we're talking about like circus events.
Yeah.
And like magicians and stuff like that. Like, what are we doing here? It's a complete puppet show, you know? We've got so much money for bullshit, and yet we've not got any money to service the debt that's just spiraling out of control. And it just completely bewilders me, and I don't understand it.
So a Doge is needed in the UK.
A massive Doge. We need our best people to be cutting government spending like no other. But this comes at solving the big problems first, and then we can solve the little problems, because we know how much fraud happens within the government as well. You know, with contracts going to people or family members of people in government. You know, it was at McKinley, the aide for Kier Starmer, the Irish guy.
Oh yeah. I can't remember his name, but yeah. The aide for him, his personal advisor sort of thing, and his father was owning all these sort of hotels out in Ireland and in the UK.
Yeah, and his dad was making money off of it, 7 million a
through
year,
like 6 shell companies that all linked to Cyprus at a 0% tax rate.
Yeah,
it's
wild. And you know, this is kind of what happens now. We actually saw something similar happen with Angela Rayner as well. Yeah. So Katie Ferguson, who is a sort of investigative journalist. She works, let me have a look at this. So she's a political editor for The Sun. Now, she said that Angela Rayner's boyfriend, Sam Tarry, works for a political lobbying firm whose client got a $280,000 cash boost from the Labour government. The bombshell revealed plunges the deputy MP into a fresh hypocrisy storm ahead of Parliament's return on Monday. Now, you know, she's actually been in the news recently for having for buying her third house. Yeah, she's got a net worth of some 4.8 million or something.
Yeah. How
is she, with no qualifications, and just really no real education, and on an MP's wage of 100 and whatever thousand a year, amassed a net worth of £4.8 million?
Well, they can have side hustles, I suppose, but we don't know what their thing is, unless she got early into Bitcoin or something like that. You know, I don't know, but she doesn't seem like the type to be investing in that.
I'm going to push back on that. No, they can't have side hustles. They cannot have side hustles. Yeah. They cannot have other businesses going on.
But I don't think that. No, I don't. I mean, legally, is that they're not allowed to have side hustles, or
I don't think they should have side hustles.
Oh, that was your opinion. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think they should be able to, be in businesses when they are setting the, there's
a conflict of interest.
Exactly. Yeah. What stops them from, investing in a company that they then lobby the Labour government to then invest in that company for a massive government grant?
It does smell, especially if she's amassed at 4.5 million net worth, you said? 4.8.
Something big.
And she's not that freaking switched on, is she? Let's be perfectly honest.
No, she's
not.
I
haven't followed her political career as such, but I've seen her resting on a boat over the summer holidays with a vape in her gob.
Yeah, well, before, she was tanning a vape on one of these dinghies.
Yeah.
That dinghy can go back to France, actually.
Maybe she owns a vape company, and that's why she's trying to limit the sale of cigarettes.
Maybe. I'm speaking from memory here, but before she got into Labour, she actually got a disciplinary from her previous job, I think working at a bank, for fraudulent work expenses.
Really?
So, it was like a triangle. It was the manager and two, Angela Rayner and someone else, were all sort of accepting and approving each other's work expenses. And this was in the sort of 2008 crisis.
Yeah.
So there was a massive scandal. There was an investigation. She resigned before she got fired and then went to Labour. And this is the person who is literally head of the finances.
Yeah,
of the
it
UK.
definitely stinks. Yeah, no, for sure. There's a lot of corruption. inside politics, but especially from the left-wing politicians. I always feel like the ones that want communism and the ones that are socialist. I always think they're the worst. The champagne socialists.
Yeah.
You know, they're money hungry and they want to control all of the money and give themselves a big fat paycheck.
Well, it's do as I say, not as I do. And one of the reasons why she bought this to her home is she put her primary residence as something that wasn't a primary residence, which then avoided a £40,000 stamp duty bill. So she's doing the whole swindle.
She's hustling, whilst trying to crack down on people that are not paying tax.
Yeah.
Well, Rachel Reeves was, but she's complicit in it, which is super bizarre. Moving away from UK politics, we can go into the AfD. Now, again, probably like politically, I follow German politics a little bit. I find it probably outside America and UK, I probably find it the third most interesting.
Yep.
And I'm a big fan of Alice Weidel and the AfD party. I really do like it, and I like what they're all about. However, ahead of their local elections, we've seen something insane come out. Now, over the last month, it was 4 different candidates of AfD party died suddenly ahead of the local elections next week, forcing ballots to be reprinted and reissued. However, since then, another 2 have died. So that's taking the total to 6 German AfD candidates have died, quote unquote, suddenly and unexpectedly before the key state election. Now, I think the local elections start in around 11 days. But these 2 that have died were the sort of reserves of the 4 that already had died. And I just want to show you listen, stuff in life can be, there's natural causes and all of these things, and people do die, unfortunately. But we're talking about the oldest one of these people being 71 years old, that being Wolfgang Sertz. And obviously there was a 60-year-old Ralph Lange, there was Wolfgang Klinger, who was 59-year-old, and other 59-year-old as well. So some of them were in their 50s, the majority of them in their 50s, and the 2 ones that have died recently, again, in their 50s, late 50s, early 60s, which you can say is old. It's not really old compared to the life expectancy. Now, again, it's been pretty shut down pretty quickly. They've said that there's no foul play. They've ruled out foul play completely, and they said it's natural causes. 1 allegedly died of suicide, 1 allegedly died of a heart attack, and then the others haven't really been disclosed, but they've been said it was natural causes, and that's the way that they've sort of passed. Now, this could be completely true. It could be completely true. It could just be bad luck. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people, if you're looking at things, Alice Weidel has came out and said that the deaths are, quote-unquote, suspicious. That's the leader of the AfD party. And again, a lot of backlash has erupted, of course, on X. Mm-hmm. And people just simply asking what is going on. And bearing in mind, AfD are polling first in Germany at this moment in time. They were expected to win a large sort of majority in the local elections. But
not if they have any candidates.
Not if they have any candidates, but especially with the whole thing where to do with the ballots, like they have to be reprinted and then reissued as well. So it's all a bit iffy. Is there any foul play at stake?
Look, you could say coincidence, but I've got the times of the death here. So we've got one on the 16th of August. It says cause of death sudden and unexpected. That can be interpreted in a lot of ways. 19th of August, sudden and unexpected. 27th of August, sudden and unexpected. 28th of August, sudden and unexpected. And we've got 2 on the 1st of September who were the party list candidates. So they were the backups.
Yeah.
One's for kidney failure and one's for suicide. Now,
Nice.
Some of the sudden and unexpected are like heart attacks and things like that. Like, okay, I am obviously a bit of a conspiracy theorist. I quite like it. I'm an open-minded skeptic, okay?
Yeah.
I like to get all of the information and then I'll decide whether I believe it or not.
Yeah.
It is factually true from the 70s that they had technology that you could shoot someone with a sort of invisible gun, like a very small gun, and it would prick them, and you could cause a heart attack. Now, I'm not saying that's what's happening, guys.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that, but I'm saying this technology exists. Now, if there was fraud and sort of bad actors at play here, think the timing is very interesting with the local elections, not only to get the main people off, but to get the backup people off as well. And, you know, a lot of these are old, you know, so we've got two people at 59, one who was 72, who was
Who's the oldest of the pack, yeah.
Yeah, the oldest, Wolfgang Klinger. Bear in mind, you love that name, Wolfgang.
Yeah.
And then we also got 67 as well. So, you know, it could be natural causes, heart attack, bad timing. The suicide is interesting. The suicide is very interesting.
This was the reserve, wasn't it?
That was the reserve.
So he committed suicide, supposedly. Or allegedly, sorry.
Yeah. I just think it's interesting. I think it definitely requires a very thorough investigation.
Well, the authorities already said there's no foul play at play here. They've already sort of said, boom, that's it. Line under it. But there's not really much information out there with regard to it. It's kind of like hush-hush. It's like, this is it. That's the answer. Done.
Yeah. Well, you know, you're asking the government to investigate itself.
But when the party leader of the AFD, Alice Weidel, was saying suspicious, that's all. She didn't say much. She just said it's suspicious. Mm-hmm. That's it. There's something there. I mean, people are very afraid of the AFD and what they stand for, which, by the way, they don't stand for anything crazy, but you know how the media are. They try and make them out to be sort of racist, homophobes, all these kind of things.
Yeah,
they just don't want illegal migrants in the country. That's all Alice Weidel's policies are.
Yep.
And I love it. I said it last time. Alice Weidel is a lesbian. She is married to a brown immigrant. And they're still trying to call her homophobic.
Yeah.
They still try and call her racist. They still try and call her things just because she wants illegal migrants out of her country. But I think Alice is a great leader.
Yeah.
She's such a great leader, and I really do hope that this sort of setback doesn't cause any problems. Yeah,
you're right. And also, they love to conflate these right-wing parties to, you know, the Nazi ideology.
Which is completely opposite scale.
It literally stands for National Socialist Party. Mm-hmm. Socialist, left-wing. Like, this is right-wing politics.
Yeah.
Like, apples and pears.
It's weird with, like, when you get called a Nazi for something, but it's like, you know, it's completely contradicts itself because, yeah, as you said, right-wing and the Nazi party don't correlate whatsoever. It's nothing to do with each other.
Yeah.
But they still get branded with that. In fact, I would go as far to say is that the left-wing are more Nazis than Alice Weidel or the right-wing populist parties could ever be deemed as.
Yeah, I mean, you know, controlling free speech is one of the key, you know, instruments of sort of a tyrannical government, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
That's the first thing they do. They control the sort of sentiment of society and you control what you think and what you say. We're seeing so much more restrictions of speech on the left than we do on the right, and that is a clear indicator that, you know, the right is more sort of libertarian, more hands-off. You know, we want to open the discourse of the sort of public town centre. I don't think any opinion is invalid, you know, because everybody has their reasons, right? So you can't invalidate reasons based on your dislike for it. And how arrogant are you to go through life saying that you don't want to hear things that people say? The arrogance of it just reeks. It's horrible. And you know what? They use these things like, oh, you don't want to offend people. You do not have a right to be, you know, not offended. You know, everybody has a right to be offensive, because guess what? What offends you might not offend me.
Yeah.
That's the key difference here.
Yeah, channeling your inner Ricky Gervais there. I like that. No, but that you talking absolute sense there with regard to offensiveness. And that's why I was saying the other day that British comedies, we're talking about a famous comedian that was, of course, arrested for things that he said or jokes that he said on Twitter. We had the best, like in the noughties, like I suppose I'm old enough to remember the noughties comedies, man. They were so good. Like national television in the UK was like an all-time high, and it was like things that just wouldn't hit the TV. Like this stuff was on like ITV, you know, BBC, you know, Little Britain, Come Fly With Me, all of these sorts of shows. It was like the peak of British sort of comedy, but these shows are completely cancelled, and you can't air them anymore because certain groups would get offended. But the way I see it is that comedians can't make jokes about other people anymore unless it's against white people. Mm-hmm. So they're allowed to do it. If it's a white person, you can go ham, you can do all you want, all these kind of things. But the moment a white person says something about somebody else, then all of a sudden they are racist, Nazis, and need to be cancelled off the television screen. So whilst people were talking about being offended and all this thing, it's only in place for usually white men. White men can't make jokes. That's really the case that we're at.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just goes into like the controlling the narrative sort of angle on this. I mean, look, you can even look back in history where, we're talking about the Charlie Hebdo killings in France. They disrespected the Prophet Muhammad, and they got killed for it.
Yeah.
And they're trying to move these like blasphemy laws into Britain. I think that's a massive thing. They're trying to sort of push it forward and make sure that they're not inciting hatred or violence to anyone. Like, if you have a negative opinion of something, you are allowed to have that opinion.
Yeah.
And blasphemy laws should not be in place. I'm a Christian. Everybody has a right to be to talk about Christianity in whatever way they like.
And dissect it and
exactly.
Debate it.
It doesn't mean I'm going to agree with it, but I do not have a right to be offended with your opinions. Same with Islam, and it's the same with Judaism. It's the exact same thing.
Speaking about Islam, there was a mass stabbing attack, of course, in Marseille yesterday afternoon. Essentially, we've seen a guy, a Tunisian man. He was legal, but a Tunisian man get evicted out, who was known by authorities, by the way. He essentially went into a hotel. He was evicted out of it because he couldn't pay. So he came back with 2 butcher's knives and a baton, stabbed the manager, stabbed his son, stabbed 2 other workers, went out onto the street and carried on his stabbing spree. 5 people in total were stabbed. 1 is currently in critical condition at the time of recording this podcast. And then police had to take matters into their own hands because he wouldn't stop, and they shot him dead at the scene. Have a watch of this video.
C'est bien fait.
So yeah, that's it. How do you think the police dealt with the situation, and what do you think of the attack and the state of France?
Do you know if he died or not?
Yeah, the attacker died. Yeah, shot dead.
Well, I think that's quite fair. Stabbing 5 people should be a death sentence anyway. Terrorist attacks should not have the right to life.
He did shout Alan Snapbar, by the way, whilst he was doing it.
Oh, well, there you are then. I find it quite ironic how he was in front of a Istanbul city restaurant there. And he was obviously from sort of that region. Tunisia, is it?
Yeah, he's from Tunisia. And yeah, he was there legally, but known by police. Obviously a troubled migrant, of course, that came over. But of course, the misconception, he was not illegal. Whilst France do have tons and tons of illegal migrants, and that's a topic for another day, I suppose. This guy was legal. And of course, the mayor came out, commended the police's action and said that his priority is keeping the safety of the men and women in Marseille. He, of course, visited the scene yesterday. But yeah, just another day sort of in modern day Europe. And this is what we kind of see with these individuals just being allowed to roam free. Now, in France it's different to us. We have like all the Pakistanis and Afghanis. They have a massive problem with sort of the North African migrants. So Algerians, Tunisians, all of these people, they all have a sort of common denominator, but they just cause outrage. They make a cesspit of the place. Paris is a fallen place, and I'm actually going to be going to Paris in about 2 weeks' time. I'm going to channel my inner Charles Veach and probably do a little vlog just walking around the city so people can see what it looks like.
You might need some security for that.
Yeah, I might need some security. Is your dad on hand, is he?
Yeah, we can get him dressed in black with an earpiece. We'll get him there. He's going to be coming down for the protest as well.
But yeah, the France is a complete cesspit. As you know, I've got a French girlfriend, and she says like her local town in the south, which is like a place where people go on holiday. The French Riviera, a beautiful place, and there's like no-go places in places like Cannes and stuff like this due to the chaos that erupts due to these North African migrants, legal and illegal, that are staying there. They're visitors that don't adapt to French culture, and as you can see, again, causing mass amounts of problems within the country.
Yeah, and it goes back, legal or illegal. Like, if it's legal and they're causing problems, well, they need to be sent back.
Deported, yeah. How would you have this saying, known to police? Well, what did he do, first and foremost?
Yeah.
Did he have these same ideologies? Was he planning something? Was he trying to... What do you mean by known by the police? He's obviously a nuisance. If you're there illegally and you're causing a problem, you're getting arrested, you're known by police officials, then you should be back out. They gave you an opportunity and you've just spat it in their face. So go back to where you're from, Tunisia.
It should genuinely be one strike.
Yeah, one strike, especially for people that have been given the opportunity.
Exactly. And, if the rate of reoffences of these people is so high that one strike is enough. One strike, you've shown your true colours, especially with violent, crime, especially violence, violence against random people, violence against random civilians, sexual assault, anything. One chance and you are done. We do not need you. You need us.
Yeah.
That's the twist. That's the difference. And if you show your true colours, well, there you are. You and all of your family are gone.
This is a culture thing as well, right? Listen to the as I said, the reasoning of the story, the backstory of this particular attack. The guy couldn't pay for his hotel, so he was evicted. And then his call to action is, I'm going to stab and try to kill the manager, and try to kill his son, and try to stab other people, or try and stab other people on the streets, just because I could not pay for my hotel bill. Like, what world? And who the hell does he think he is?
Yeah, that just goes into the ideology disconnect.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, if you get evicted because you can't pay, that sounds like a you problem.
Yeah.
Not the manager problem. He's just
Exactly.
doing his job, It's a business. End of
This
the
is
day.
business, yeah.
And yeah, I just think it's going to get worse and worse. I've seen videos from France and Paris. Look, I like France. I go to France, I go skiing there. I've been to Nice as well.
France is probably one of the most naturally beautiful countries. You've got Val d'Isère in terms of the Alps, then you've gone down to the French Riviera. The architecture in Paris is stunning. It's beautiful. The culture's great.
Yeah.
But like everywhere in Europe, it's ruined by mass migration. Not just illegal, but also legal from places that don't share the same ideology as the French people. The people that aren't making France better, they're aggressing it as a nation. And that's why you see so many people going against these left-wing governments like Macron and, people favouring sort of Le Pen and all these other sort of populist parties because they want to recognise their country again. And again, this is just yet another situation that shows us as to why France and the rest of Europe needs re-immigration and needs new leadership.
Yeah. Because
the correlation that all of these countries have in common is that they're all operated under a left-wing government.
Absolutely. It's really shocking. As you say, the French, I've even seen videos from these no-go areas where there are churches. Now, churches are usually, they unlock their door, you're allowed to go into churches. Well, I've seen a load of these illegal immigrants just go in, they took over a church and put tents in there. Like the disrespect. I mean, you even saw the Notre Dame burn down.
Yeah.
Allegedly, it was a worker who threw a cigarette butt on the roof or something like that. But we're seeing it in the UK as well. There was a big church that burned down as well. You're not seeing mosques burn down.
Yeah.
Not at the same rate as churches.
Yeah, you wouldn't see that, and you wouldn't go personally to the UAE and start causing havoc. Would you set up a tent in a mosque in the UAE?
No, because I actually value my freedom and I also respect their society. I'm not looking to change Islamic countries to Christianity because we have our countries. Yeah, but if we don't have our own sort of feet in the ground and our base for our sort of cultural identity and our religion, then we will not have it anywhere. This is the key. You don't have freedom if you have an invasive force trying to change the makeup of the country. And smaller forces usually work more efficiently because they have to. Okay, if you're 16 or 10% of the population, you have to be so much more organized to actually implement sort of your ideology and implement your control over society.
Yeah.
And all these revolve around the mosques as well.
Yeah.
All the indoctrination, all the sort of the radicalization happens within the mosques. We saw the bomber in Manchester be part of the Didsbury Mosque as well, which was subjected to an investigation by Tommy Robinson.
Yeah.
Like Didsbury, I lived in Rusholme. I lived in Withington. That's like 5 minutes from Didsbury. And Didsbury itself in Manchester is a beautiful place, yet we're seeing massive radicalization happen. And when it endangers civilians, like I had friends who went to the Ariana Grande concert, and I saw them in class the next day, and they were shook. Really, really shaken up. A lot of people lost their lives there. A lot of people have sustaining injuries, lost limbs, PTSD, and it's just insane how we can turn a blind eye to this. This is why they radicalize people, and they use the terminology like Islamophobic. Islamophobia doesn't exist because it talks about an irrational fear. I think, if I'm being honest, I think the fear is rational because the majority of terrorist attacks happen from Muslim faith.
And that's a Home Office statistic, by the way, in the UK, 80%.
Exactly. And, obviously we're not saying all, but we're saying the vast majority.
Yeah.
And it's fair to say, we can't be scared when we talk about these things because at the end of the day, this is the safety of you and me and our children and our friends and family as well. And we have to put that first. We have to put the British native populace, their safety first. And if we don't, it's treasonous.
And that comes back to exactly what we said at the start of the podcast about the Foreign Secretary in 2017 in the UAE that said these attacks are going to be coming out more so in Europe. Now, Dom, we are running out a little bit of time, but I know you want to jump quickly into Trump and Gaza. Well, you got a couple of things on Trump, so the floor is all yours.
Yeah, so a couple of things. I'm going to start with these strikes on the Venezuelan gangs. Now, we've covered this before, how we've designated, or Trump has designated Venezuela as a sort of criminal cartel terrorist organization. Now, this comes after seizing, I think it was like 30 tons of cocaine from the Venezuelan president. Now, he's actually... he's done a massive strike on one of these violent cartel boats here. So we are seeing the use of drones in South America now, which is really unprecedented. I think it's going to put the cartels on a massive back foot. So Trump has shared extraordinary footage of American forces carrying out a kinetic strike on a drug trafficking boat in the Caribbean Sea, killed 11 Venezuelan members of a violent cartel. He announced the operation during an address at the White House on Tuesday, telling reporters the US military had just, over the last few minutes, literally shot out a drug-carrying boat. Now, he added, there are more where that came from. We have a lot of drugs pouring into our country. Now, this is the type of no-nonsense approach that we like to see. These people are importing massive amounts of drugs into the US. And, guess what? If you know that you could get drone striked on your boat, I think that's a massive deterrent.
Massive deterrent, yeah. No, it's going to make people think twice on whether to do that again.
100%. Now, look, I'm going to make a prediction here. I think we might see similar strikes on Mexican cartels as well, because we know that's a massive issue. And designating them as a terrorist organization opens up the legal framework to do drone strikes. And you know what? The US military is something you do not want to fuck with.
Yeah.
In any case of the matter, they are the forefront leading in innovation, especially in drones and aerial warfare as well. They have jets that people can't buy. I don't think they sell the F-35 jet, which is like the pinnacle of aerial combat.
They're the ones that was flexing with Vladimir Putin when he arrived in Alaska.
Yeah, that's the B-2 stealth bomber.
No, that flew over, but he had like a ton of jets like on the floor. Like, when he came off the plane.
It was flanked by F-35s. I'm pretty sure, or maybe F-16s. But yeah, you don't want to mess with America. And this is the technology we know they have available. I'm sure they have a lot behind the scenes they're working on. So the TDA, which is what they call the Venezuelan gang, is a designated foreign terrorist organization operating under the control of Nicolas Maduro, who is the president. So this is massive. Responsible for mass murder, drug trafficking, sex trafficking, and acts of violence and terror across the United States and the Western Hemisphere. They said, please let this serve as a notice to anybody even thinking about bringing drugs into the United States of America. Beware.
There you go.
It's crazy, and I don't think they're going to be winning that fight, if I'm going to be honest. Now, also on Trump as well, we've seen, as we mentioned previously in the podcast, how we're trying to get students and their families to the UK on these student visas, which I know personally there's massive fraud in the student visa. Now, Trump is offering to pay Gazans $5,000 to leave for 10 years as the US plans to take over war-torn territory. So he's offered Palestinians this £5,000 sort of self-deportation to the Gazan people while they want to sort of assume control of the territory for a decade. Now, the scheme forms part of a 38-page document seen by the Washington Post that is currently being reviewed in the White House by the administration. Now, under the plan, the entire population of the 2 million Palestinians would be relocated through what officials described as a voluntary departures. Residents would either move to other nations or to designated secure areas within the territory. So what that last part is, designated secure areas during the territory. So they're wanting to control the land that the Palestinians and the Gazas have access to. Now, this really reeks of a sort of an expansion of the control of Israel into Gaza and the West Bank territory. Really, if I'm being honest, like the narrative that I'm seeing from my understanding of it is that Israel want to take control of the whole place. They want to take control of the West Bank and all the sort of land the Palestinians have. And we're seeing Trump offer the US money in order to sort of achieve what Israel wants to do in the region.
I've heard something a bit different. Like a while back, Trump was like, "We're gonna take it over and turn it into like the Riviera of the Middle East," but not saying that it was a part of Israel, but saying that it was going to be a part of the United States. And then he said, "Well, what are you going to plan to do to pay for that?" And he was like, "Nothing. There's nothing to take. Yeah, there's nothing to pay for. We just take it."
Well, there's nothing to pay for because Israel's bombed the whole place.
Yeah.
So you can't sell rubble. But yeah, okay. So
he wanted to make it like an American state rather than an Israeli state. Or do you think it's under a guise of?
It's definitely a Trojan horse because he said 10 years. Okay, what happens after 10 years? What happens after you've already moved all the Palestinians out and they're in these small, designated, secure places? What happens then? Okay, that's rife for Israel. It's like America's going to build this up and then Israel's going to take it. That's what I'm seeing happen here. Like, Trump can say what he likes about, the put casinos there and make it like the Riviera or like a nice like tropical paradise or whatever he likes. At the end of the day, the whole point of this is to remove the Gazans from Palestine, and then in 10 years' time, Israel will have control of that.
So you think Netanyahu is pulling the strings?
100%. We're talking about AIPAC lobbying here. AIPAC is a massive Israeli lobby firm in the US. I just feel like it's a little bit playing into Israel's book here. Again, I just feel like we shouldn't have anything to do with this, US nor UK. People have said, that it barely cover, the $5,000 would barely cover relocation and living costs for 2 years, let alone 10. And it's a non-starter because Gazans don't want to leave their homeland. They know that once they leave, they are unlikely to ever be allowed back in, which happened to Palestinians who fled Israel after 1948. So, we're basically wanting them to leave with a small payment and never come back in. And I think it's key here that they want to make secure areas for them. Well, they just want to just reduce their land rights. And I don't know, I think, me personally, I just don't want anything to do with the whole place. I don't want the UK getting involved. I don't want any Gazans in the country because they're radicalized by Hamas and that ideology. I don't want the US to get involved either because this is Israel's problem, And, I condemn Hamas. I condemn the attacks on October 7th. I condemn the Israeli response as well. It's a tricky situation because these guys have been at war since really 48. But we've only seen one side expand and win, which is Israel. Now, this is sort of the lobbying that I'm seeing come through from the US side in order to facilitate that expansion.
You want to see a situation where both teams lose, don't you?
No comment.
That's all we've really got time for today. This has been a long one, to be fair. But as always, guys, thank you so much for the support. Do get involved in the old comment section below. We do like debating down there with you. Hit like, hit subscribe. We're also on Spotify now as well. So if you want to listen to us on another platform for whatever reason, maybe you don't have YouTube Premium, maybe you're going on a flight somewhere, then we're now on Spotify, so you can get the podcast by searching the name Point Blank Podcast on Spotify. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Dom, final words?
Yep, if you want to follow me on X as well, my @ is pointblankdom. We're going to be posting a lot of content on there. Obviously, you're going to see in real time my reactions to the news and how that's updated, and also really my sort of personal opinions and voice on there as well. So guys, make sure you follow me on X. If you have any questions or anything, make sure to drop them down in the comment section below. And yeah, this has been Point Blank. Thank you for listening.
Take care. Peace.